Yesterday, Premier Ford, before Carney's meeting with Trump, said that Canada needs to be more aggressive in the face of U.S. tariffs.
I can let President Trump continuously increase tariffs, and the Prime Minister's decreasing tariffs. That doesn't cut it. So we have to be prepared, and the auto sector needs to be prepared. Not only our good uniform members, but also the Prime Minister.
It started with a demand, not a request. Donald Trump, back in full campaign mode, declared that every car sold in America must be built in America. But there's a problem. North America's auto industry isn't just American anymore. It's deeply tied to Canada's metals, energy, and minerals, and Ottawa just said no. In 2025, Canada didn't just refuse Trump's demand, it countered with a national energy offensive. From Nova Scotia's massive 5,000-megawatt Wind West project to new copper and nickel mines in the north, Canada is building the backbone of a clean energy empire. It's a move that could rewrite trade flows across the continent and leave Washington with fewer options than it thinks. Because here's the twist. While the US is slapping tariffs, Canada is quietly wiring its grid to power American cities. Tap that like button, subscribe, and keep watching. This story's just warming up. Canada's response didn't come from parliament speeches or political slogans. It came from construction sites, real steel, real turbines, and real investment. When Trump's 2025 tariffs hit, 10 to 50% on Canadian metals, 100% on semiconductors, Ottawa didn't retaliate with more tariffs. It launched something far more ambitious: 5 nation-building projects designed to make Canada indispensable to both the US and Europe. At the center of this strategy sits Nova Scotia's Wind West project, a 5,000-megawatt offshore wind farm capable of producing 24 terawatt-hours of clean energy each year. That's enough to power more than 2 million homes. What makes it revolutionary is its export orientation. Nearly 90% of that energy is destined for export through the Quebec-Maine transmission corridor, a high-voltage lifeline to New England's overstressed power grid. Trump's America First push has already started to strain that grid. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, electricity demand could double within 15 years, driven by EVs, data centers, and manufacturing reshoring. But here's the twist. The U.S. doesn't have enough clean generation or transmission capacity to meet that demand. Canada does. Mark Carney, Canada's new energy czar, calls it the Energy Superpower Doctrine, a plan to turn Canada's geography into leverage. Wind, hydro, and minerals aren't just natural resources anymore. They're strategic assets. Under Carney's plan, the government fast-tracked billions in public-private funding to projects that connect mines to markets and ports to power lines. Take the Port of Montreal expansion, now set to handle an additional 1 million containers per year. It's not just about shipping goods, it's about exporting refined lithium, processed copper, and green steel. Ottawa is betting that by becoming the logistical heart of North America's clean energy supply chain, it can offset any loss in traditional manufacturing exports caused by Trump's tariffs. And it's working. The McKevlin Bay copper mine in British Columbia just became Canada's first net-zero mining operation, powered entirely by hydroelectric energy. Further north, the Red Chris copper-gold expansion promises a 15% output boost, while Ontario's Ring of Fire region is unlocking nickel and chromite reserves crucial for EV batteries. Together, these sites could add 1,200 new jobs and attract over $8 billion in private investment, mostly from European partners seeking alternatives to Chinese and Russian supply chains. Meanwhile, U.S. automakers are quietly lobbying Washington to ease up on the tariffs. Why? Because the very minerals they need for electric vehicles come from Canada. Lithium for batteries, nickel for cathodes, copper for wiring. Without those, Build in America becomes Wait for Canada. Here's where the story takes a sharp turn. The more Washington isolates Canada with tariffs, the more U.S. industries depend on Canadian imports. A recent Bloomberg analysis estimated that 30 to 40% of North American auto supply chains now rely on cross-border components. Cutting that link would add months of delays and billions in costs. Carney understands this perfectly. His strategy isn't to fight the tariffs, it's to outgrow them. By investing in resource sovereignty, Canada ensures that whether or not the U.S. cooperates, American factories still need Canadian energy and minerals. The message to Trump's team is clear. You can wall off your factories, but you can't wall off geology. The irony is that this quiet Canadian surge mirrors a larger global realignment. Europe and Japan are racing to secure new sources of clean energy, and Canada is stepping into that vacuum. Ottawa's new export agreements with Germany and South Korea hint at something bigger, a future where Canadian energy doesn't just flow south but across oceans. But before Canada celebrates too early, there's a looming question. How far will Trump push this standoff? Because as the tariffs tighten, and as the rhetoric heats up, the pressure shifts from energy projects to diplomacy itself. And that's where the next chapter begins, when politics and power grids collide. When Canada refused to back down, Washington doubled down. Trump's team escalated its rhetoric, accusing Ottawa of energy manipulation and industrial freeloading. But behind the speeches, U.S. manufacturers were panicking. Ford, GM, and Tesla quietly warned the White House that without Canada's critical minerals, their electric vehicle timelines could collapse. In private memos leaked to Reuters, automakers estimated that Trump's tariffs could raise the cost of EV production by up to $7,000 per vehicle. The reason? Every EV battery sold in North America relies on nickel, copper, or lithium, all of which Canada refines cleaner and cheaper than the US could domestically. While Washington was talking tough, Ottawa was locking in export deals. Here's the twist. The same tariffs meant to isolate Canada were pushing it toward energy independence and export dominance. Under Mark Carney's guidance, Canada began what insiders call the mine-to-market acceleration. It's not just about extraction. It's about creating entire domestic value chains. The new McKevlin Bay and Red Chris expansions feed raw copper into refineries in Quebec and Ontario. That copper is then used in domestic manufacturing, from EV chargers to wind turbine components, before being exported through Montreal's upgraded port facilities. This is how Carney turned a tariff war into a nation-building opportunity. In his own words, if the U.S. wants everything built in America, we'll make sure America needs what's built in Canada. That strategy is backed by numbers. According to Natural Resources Canada, the country's critical minerals production is set to rise 40% by 2026, while energy exports are projected to hit record highs by 2027. At the same time, the International Energy Agency reports that Canada now ranks second globally in clean electricity per capita, thanks to massive investments in wind and hydro. Meanwhile, across the border, U.S. grid operators are sounding alarms. The North American Electric Reliability Corporation recently warned that large parts of the U.S. could face increased risk of blackouts by 2030, as clean energy integration lags behind demand growth. It's the perfect contrast, and while the U.S. is stuck debating energy policy, Canada is quietly wiring its future, and the implications go beyond economics. By controlling the flow of both minerals and power, Canada is reshaping North America's balance of leverage. For decades, the U.S. dictated trade terms through its massive consumer market. But now, energy scarcity flips that equation. Power becomes the new currency, and Canada controls the vault. Where the story takes a sharp turn is on the global stage. China and the European Union are watching this continental tug-of-war closely. Beijing, still recovering from Western supply chain exits, has offered joint venture deals to Canadian miners. The EU, meanwhile, is negotiating long-term purchase contracts for green hydrogen and rare metals. Ottawa's bet is clear. The more global demand it attracts, the less it relies on U.S. goodwill. Even domestically, public sentiment has shifted. Polls from Angus Reid show that over 70% of Canadians now support reducing trade dependence on the U.S., a reversal from just 5 years ago. What started as a defensive reaction to Trump's tariffs has turned into a full-blown economic transformation, a strategic decoupling built on sustainability. Still, it's not without risks. These megaprojects require massive capital, and delays could expose Ottawa to economic and political blowback. Yet Carney's team seems prepared for that. The federal budget now includes a $15 billion energy security fund designed to cushion against global market shocks. Investors see that as a signal. Canada isn't just reacting, it's planning decades ahead. By late 2025, construction drones are flying over Nova Scotia's coastlines, copper trains are rolling out of British Columbia, and Quebec's transmission lines are lighting up Maine's towns. The symbolism is impossible to miss. While Washington builds trade walls, Canada builds infrastructure. This isn't just an energy plan, it's a declaration of independence. A message to Washington that Canada will no longer be the junior partner in North American trade, it will be the indispensable one. So here's where the story leaves us. Trump's demand to build everything in America was supposed to secure U.S. dominance, but instead, it's fueling Canada's rise as North America's new energy and mineral powerhouse. The irony couldn't be sharper. While Washington turns inward, Ottawa is exporting power, metals, and momentum. By 2026, Canada's clean grid will light U.S. cities, its copper will wire U.S. cars, and its ports will ship to the very markets Trump tried to cut off. The so-called energy superpower vision isn't just a slogan anymore, it's happening in real time. And if history's any guide, whoever controls the resources controls the future. If you found this breakdown insightful, tap that like button, consider subscribing, and drop a comment on whether you think Trump's tariffs helped or hurt America's long-term position. Because this isn't the end, it's just the next chapter in the resource war.